So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Ms. McLean. Please cast your vote. Motion to approve passes unanimously. Next, we move to special reports and presentations. Due to the fact that we've only been in school 4 days, we still got good news. So things continue to happen year-round. Ms. Webb.
We will start with Robertsville. The TSA National Competition was held at RMS, where students competed virtually throughout the month of June. RMS TSA students placed in the following categories: first place in children's stories, second place in essays on technology and STEM animation, top 10 in construction challenge, digital photography, and promotional marketing. Congratulations to rising 8th grader Xavier Harper, who competed in St. Louis at the USAG Nationals. Xavier brought home 3 gold medals in synchro trampoline, individual trampoline, and tumbling. Xavier will be on the Team USA on the world stage in November.
Just want to re-emphasize that last statement that she read. He will be on Team USA. See, 4 more years, another Olympics, very possible, very possible. Keep your attention on this young man. Mr. Stevens.
I have Jefferson Middle School good news. Jefferson Middle School purchased 5 exercise bikes with desk and 5 under-desk pedalers to help students stay active while completing academic work or reading. The bikes and the pedalers will be used in the library and will be available for teachers to check out, to use in their classrooms, and will be also available to be utilized in the physical education classes. Jefferson Middle School teachers are extremely excited to utilize these bikes and pedalers to help students stay focused while completing work and to promote the importance of living a healthy lifestyle. Very good, Jefferson. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McLean.
Okay, I have good news from Willowbrook. 2 Willowbrook students won first place for their grade level in the Dogwood Arts Synergy Art Exhibition at the Clayton Art Center for the Arts at Maryville College. Asaya Ward won first place for her artwork entitled Kooky Cats for second grade, and Daniela Angula won first place for her artwork entitled Pumpkin for kindergarten. They will be honored at the closing reception on August 5th. And that's some of the good news from Willowbrook.
And in anticipation of the year moving forward, we will be hearing more news each meeting, and that will be a good thing. While we're here with special reports and presentations, I'm going to turn to Mr. Lay to introduce one of our newest administrative staff members, if you would.
Yes, sir. I would like to stand, but I want to make sure everyone hears me. I would like to introduce, in fact, let's just come up front where they can see you. Okay. Yes, sir. This is Mr. John Stoltz. He is our new special education supervisor. He basically comes to us from Monterey. He has worked for the State Department for 4 years. He was a special education director for 2 years. And then he basically has a total of 16 years in education. He has 3 boys, and I'm sure a lovely wife. I've never met her. Okay, that's right, okay. We are extremely fortunate to have Mr. Stoltz. This is his first board meeting, and I hope the first of many. So welcome to Oak Ridge Schools, sir.
Thank you, sir. Please help me and welcome him to the Oak Ridge Schools.
Thank you.
I do have a question, though, Mr. Lay. Since he was with the State Department, do we now have to be careful what we say about the State Department?
No, sir, it's actually the opposite. We now have favor with the State
Oh,
Department.
okay,
Yes,
that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say.
Yes, sir. You know, I will add to that, we applied for a grant last year that we were denied, and honestly, because of Mr. Stoltz's connections, we have been informed that we will receive that grant this year, and just very positive. So once again, his positive working relationship with the state, that's going to equate to just better services and opportunities for our students.
Great. Very good. Very good. Okay, next we move on to the public forum. The public forum is for anyone who would like to address a topic that is not on the agenda. You may address a topic that is on the agenda when it is presented. If you would like to do that, at that time, please raise your hand to be recognized. If you choose to address the board, you will have 3 minutes to speak. The board may or may not respond to your comments, or may have the superintendent address your concerns. When you speak, please come to the podium and sign in, and then state your name and address for the board. Is there anyone who would like to address the board at this time?
I'm Rose Weaver, and I'm the education chairperson for the NAACP, and I am just very, very excited. We're having a back-to-school fair. We're enlisting the whole Oak Ridge community, but we're specifically working to encourage parents in the Scarborough community to establish a relationship with the school, the Oak Ridge schools, with administration, and as well with the Board of Education. It's going to be August the 7th, 6:00 p.m. I know that Dr. Borchers approved flyers that probably went out through the school system, but we have extra flyers today if anybody would like them. And one of our keynote speakers is going to be Dr. Adams, who is going to be sharing with a lot of with parents about the curriculum. We've had questions, and we think that this will provide parents an opportunity to have a one-on-one. So we're really excited, and I think this is going to be the beginning of many outreach efforts such as this to enlist our parents. We call this our premature PTA. That's what this is going to be. The next announcement that I have is about the Scarborough Community Alumni Association reunion that is coming up in September, and we're going to be honoring the Oak Ridge Tennessee 85. We have information about that that you can share with not only the Board of Education, but your administrators, and we hope to see the Board of Education there at our scholarship banquet, because that is when our students, along with the Tennessee 85, are going to be honored. And these are just some invites for the schools, the Board of Education, as well as the school administration. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rose, and thank you for all you're doing to improve quality education in Oak Ridge. We thank you for that. Next.
Hi,
Pull the microphone.
down. Well, I'm short.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. My name is Linda Pellick. I'm the grandparent of 2 elementary school children. My children went to Oak Ridge schools, and I went to Oak Ridge schools. I'm here today to ask, to thank the Oak Ridge schools for the way they handled the COVID-19 last year, and to request that the Oak Ridge schools follow the current CDC guidelines to require masks of all children in Oak Ridge schools, both vaccinated and unvaccinated. That's a recent ruling, and I realize that the decision for voluntary masks was made before that ruling, but things are moving rapidly, and I request that the Oak Ridge schools follow that rapid development and ask children and staff to be masked. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your comments.
My name is Leticia Delmo. I live in 121 Normandy Road. I would like to echo the comment that was just made regarding the mask. My daughter is a freshman at Oak Ridge High School. My son is in 6th grade at Robertsville Middle School. Because they were both virtual last year, my son attended the orientation at Robertsville Middle School. And of course, my daughter attended the orientation at the high school. And basically, at the Oak Ridge High School, I think that, I'm not even sure that the word mask was mentioned. Well, at Robertsville, it's just mentioned that it was optional. Again, the CDC guidelines is for everybody indoors, particularly in areas that are high propagation and contamination rates. East Tennessee falls in that. So the school, from what I understand, the Oak Ridge schools have, among others, 2 responsibilities. One is to provide a safe environment for all the students, and also basically be an environment free of harassment and bullying. And that's basically, as Mr. Fillower just said, it's been 4 days, and my children have been getting comments nonstop because they're wearing a mask. So if the board is not going to abide by the CDC guidelines, I mean, I understand that it's, by district and maybe the state of Tennessee, I would respectfully request that the schools do enforce the non-bullying, non-harassment. My children don't need to hear that. They're doing that for their own protection. And my son is 11, so he's not eligible for the vaccine. My daughter's been partially vaccinated, so she will get a second shot soon. However, I still think that in the current environment with the Delta variant, that would be the responsible thing of enforcing masks. But I would say, again, at the bare minimum, to have the children free of harassment and bullying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gretchen Toney, and my daughter Ella Toney goes to Robertsville Middle School, and today she was sent home for quarantine. She has already been exposed. She is wearing a mask, but I'd like to also reiterate the comments that we've heard earlier here, that CDC guidelines is requesting that everybody wears their masks, whether they're vaccinated or not. My daughter's only 10, so she is not able to get vaccinated. My son is 4, and so if she has been exposed and becomes positive, she will have brought it into my household, and then my son will also be at risk as well. So I really request that we follow the CDC guidelines and put that in place for the protection of people that cannot get vaccinated at this point in time. And my parents, which are in their 70s, are not coming to visit now because they're afraid of contracting it because my father has cancer. And we have not yet seen him or my mother since before this started. And we really were looking forward to having them come out, but with no masking at schools, it's just too dangerous. So we've advised them not to come visit. And it's just a hardship on the whole family as a whole. And I would really request that we reconsider, since things have changed so rapidly since before we started back to school. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you.
All right. Hello, Dr. Borchers, Board of Education. I'm Kevin Robb. I live at 105 Carnegie Drive in Oak Ridge, of course. I have a child in Woodland Elementary, which is too young to vaccinate. Last July, when you implemented a requirement for the previous school year for masks, we had 75 active cases in the community. Today, as of a couple hours ago, we have 169 active cases in the county. The CDC has noted this county as a high level of transmission. I think there's only one step up from that. As the others, I'd echo that both the CDC, but also the American Academy of Pediatrics, and just today, the Department of Education, the National Department of Education, all have come out and recommended wearing masks in school. So I'd just ask the board to reconsider the current optional guidance and require masks in schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much for those comments. I've asked the superintendent to make some comments in regard to this issue.
Yeah, I'll just briefly kind of go over our health and safety plan. I know most people are aware of the things that we are doing, but I'm going to review that and a few other things just briefly. Part of that health and safety plan is obviously providing hand sanitizer to all of our students and staff. That's still in place. Surface disinfecting. Custodians are disinfecting classrooms and high traffic areas daily. Bus disinfecting. That's happening prior to the morning and the afternoon run each day. And then something new this year is our COVID-19 testing. We received a grant, and we'll use that grant to purchase COVID-19 test kits. Our school nurses are prepared to test students and staff exhibiting those symptoms, and parents would have to get permission to have a student tested, and all those results will be brought back to us within 24 hours. Close contacts, we're probably one, if not the only district in the region that is doing close contacts. I won't point out those around us that aren't, but we're continuing to do that, and I think we're going to have some good data from that. Last year, if you remember, very, very few individuals that we quarantined actually ended up testing positive. So as we have heard tonight, we do have students that are in quarantine right now, and this week we should have some better data as far as did those two students actually test, or are they going to test positive. So that'll help us gather some data as well. And then, of course, right now, masks are optional at this point, but as we've all discussed as a board, that could change given the numbers that we see in our district. In addition to that, we've held 4 vaccine clinics for our staff and students, and still are exploring the possibility of having more clinics as allowed in the future. And then finally, Oak Ridge Schools is installing needlepoint bipolar ionization systems in all Oak Ridge Schools HVAC equipment, and this technology helps clean the indoor air and improve the air by reducing airborne particles, including certain odors, viruses, and bacteria. And currently, those are installed at the preschool, Robertsville, Willowbrook, Glenwood, and currently being installed at Oak Ridge High School.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Ms. Agle?
I feel very strongly that we need to re-implement the mask mandate. The numbers in Anderson County jumped 38% from Friday to today. And, you know, looking at where we were July 9th when I left town, it was doubling every week. More than half of our students are not old enough to be vaccinated. So they're at risk, and they're putting their families at risk. It's not too much to ask to wear a mask, and I think it does help.
Mr. Stevens.
I concur. I've had many discussions, but one very much in depth over the weekend with a daughter-in-law that's in Shelby County. She has 3 little ones that are my grands, and the oldest is 7. And she needed some reassurances and just discussions. But in that discussion, it helped me once again kind of refresh in my own memory what we're considering here. And I ask everyone to please, please, please understand we're still under a lot of emergency procedures in trying to fight this battle with COVID. We thank everyone in the community for working with us last year, our last school term, and we ask you to please work with us this school term and trust the discussions that we are having very much so. I wholeheartedly agree with all students having masks. If I'm gonna make an error, I'm gonna make an error of too cautious than not. So we'll be discussing these things. Have you students, faculty, everyone, you've had a lot of faith working with us and trying to make this as palatable as possible for everyone. But I will emphasize, or ask rather, that we emphasize very, very strongly, we got no time for bullying at this juncture. We're not playing with just running around playing cops and robbers or some other kind of little childish games. We're talking about people's lives, and the last thing that any student, regardless of the regulation, should have to deal with is someone hassling them because they are wearing a mask. If you can't agree with it, just leave them the heck alone and go on about your business. And parents, forewarn your children because they will come home if they're caught bullying other students, period. No one's got time for that now. We're dealing with life and death issues. And we're trying to always put students first in all our considerations. Students, staff, we want to lessen the dangers as much as possible. What we did last year spoke to that in terms of the cleaning procedures, the teachers working with us, people trying to be as innovative as possible to minimize lessons or learning loss during the school year. So we ask everyone, please, please, please work with us, help us. The door is open for any and all suggestions and innovative ideas. And we will work as hard as humanly possible to ensure that every child, every administrator, every educator that's in our system has the opportunity to go home and come back another day safe and sound. We are not taking any of this lightly, and we understand how deeply important because lives are at risk. So thank you for your continuing encouragement. Thank you for your comments. And we're always willing to talk to anyone in the community, basically anywhere, about these any issues in regards to our school system. We're extremely proud of it, and we want to ensure that it doesn't miss a beat in doing all that we can to help every educator, every administrator, every student, and every parent or guardian. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And and I apologize I take notes here and then I turn around and look at it and I can't read what I've written down. I apologize for that. But whoever spoke to the point about the bullying, if you haven't met or contacted the principal, you need to do that now. So as Mr. Stevens pointed out, that's not to be tolerated. So please take care of that and make us aware of how it's happening, who's involved, and so forth. Thank you all for your comments again. I will have to just tell you, we are and will continue to be on top of this on a daily basis. We're not going to make that decision tonight. If we have to make it tomorrow, we can. If we have to make it in a week, we can. Whenever. But we are on top of it. We're staying on top of it. The superintendent and his staff are in constant communication with the principals in each of our buildings. The superintendent and I talk almost on a daily basis to move forward, to make the right decisions that not only provide for the health and safety of our staff and students, but put all of our students in a position to have a quality education. And we will continue to do that because we are committed to do that. So thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Webb. Please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Let me just say to our audience, and you don't offend us, we're used to it. You're welcome to stay for as long as you want to stay till the meeting ends. But if at any point in time you're ready to go, that's fine as well. You don't offend us by getting up and leaving. As I said, that happens most occasionally, most of the time. Okay, there are a number of board policies that we're going to take a look at tonight. Let me just inform the board, this is just a small portion of the board policies that will be coming to you soon. We've tried to expedite this as best we can, as you'll see, with many of these policies, with all of these policies. We are doing a first and second reading, so we don't have to stop, come back, go through the whole process again. It can be done like this. We're legal to do it this way. Many of these policies are cosmetic changes that are taking place. Many of these policies are changes because the law has told us that's what we have to change. And whether we read them first now and second later, the law is still going to be the law, and that's what we have to go by. But if there's any board member who wants to split that up and make the second reading in our next board meeting, you can certainly do that. All you got to do is let me know. Okay? First one is Board Policy 1.8011, emergency closings. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 1.8011, emergency closings.
Heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, Public Chapter 384 prevents local government entities from designating certain employees as essential. At the beginning of the pandemic, TSBA updated their model policy to align with the need to allow some employees to be physically present in the building while others worked from home, resulting in some employees being designated as essential. Based on this new law, however, we have removed the language regarding essential employees.
Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, motion is approval of Board Policy 1.8011 on first and second reading. Please cast your vote. Motion is approved unanimously. Next item is Board Policy 2.806, bids and quotations, a first and second reading proposed. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 2.806, bids and quotations.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. Webb, seconded by Ms. McLean. Dr. Borchers.
This next one does not change our current practice, but based on Public Chapter 310, the bidded threshold can now be raised to $25,000 for those districts in the county with a population of over 40,000 people. But again, no change in our current practice.
Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, please cast your vote on Board Policy 2.806, first and second reading. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is Board Policy 3.211, new project planning, a first and second reading as well. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 3.211, new project planning.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion? Motion made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Ms. McLean. Dr. Borchers.
The State Board of Education revised its regulation on plans for new facilities. These plans are no longer required to be submitted to the Commissioner of Education for approval. So we've removed that language on this requirement from our current policy.
Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, please cast your vote on Board Policy 3.211, new project planning, first and second reading. Motion passes unanimously. Item D, Board Policy 4.301, interscholastic athletics, a first and second reading. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 4.301, interscholastic athletics.
For the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Dr. Borchers.
Two new laws change the requirements for student athletes. Public Chapter 40 requires boards to adopt a policy that ensures student athlete compliance with new standards in participation in sports, and another one was Public Chapter 272. As you can see from our policy, really that first red sentence there, student athletes shall only be allowed to participate in athletic activities or events that align with the student's sex indicated on his or her original birth certificate. Again, that's a law change, Public Chapter 40.
Comments or questions? Ms. Agel.
Is this something we have ever had a problem with?
Not to my knowledge. But as a friend of mine once said, times they are a-changing. He's not really my friend, I just like his music. Sorry. No, but to answer your question, no. But, well, I'm not going to get into that.
We do have policies against bullying, if only it could apply to the legislature.
That's what I was thinking. Thank you for going ahead and saying it. Okay, motion on the floor is Board Policy 4.301, interscholastic athletics. Please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item E, Board Policy 4.700, testing, a first reading. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 4.700, testing.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, hear a motion. Motion made by Ms. Webb, seconded by Ms. McLean. Dr. Borchers.
Well, it looks like we're going to try to set a record with 4.700 coming in front of the board again this year, but I'm going to turn to Dr. Williams to describe what this one is about.
Thank you. We have two updates in 4.7 this time. As you may remember, we didn't know how test scores were going to, how testing was going to go at all last year. So last year's test or policy adjustment was for the TN Ready and EOC scores to count only if they benefit students. Since then, they have withdrawn that law in for the department, and we are to go back to the law as it read before. So the update is TN Ready and EOC scores included in students' final grades, and you can see the listing there at 15% in the final grade. In addition to that, there is an update for the career aptitude assessments. And just to let the board know, we have historically exceeded this expectation anyway. We provide the career assessments and options for students. We're using the tool Naviance to do that this year, but thanks to Dr. Holly Cross, we have lots of opportunities that exceed this expectation.
Questions? Dr. Williams, what do we use TCAP scores for? Briefly. Just briefly.
Yeah, we do use TCAP scores for instructional planning at the beginning of the year.
That's enough. And those TCAP scores came out today, but are embargoed till August
11th or 12th, yes.
And when did we start school?
Not on the 11th or 12th.
Thank you. That's just, I always try to get that point in when I can.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Oh, Ms. Eagle, sorry.
It may be in here and I'm just not finding it, but normally part of the policy is unless, if we do not receive the results within 5 days of the end of the year, is that still? Yes,
Yes,
okay.
that's there.
That's
Still there.
All right, motion on the floor on the first reading is approval of Board Policy 4.700, testing. Please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, G. No. F, sorry. Board Policy 5.106, application and employment. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 5.106, application and employment.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
second.
Motion made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Ms. Eagle. Dr. Borchers.
Public Chapter 211 allows the superintendent to hire individuals with a teaching permit if a teacher with a valid license is not available. We have updated Policy 5.106 to clarify that this is an option. This legal change also impacts Policy 5.802, as the superintendent would be required to report potential misconduct by these individuals to the State Board of Education in the same manner. So we'll get to that when we get to 5.802.
Questions? Hearing none, on first and second reading, please cast your vote on Board Policy 5.106. Motion passes unanimously. Now to item G, Board Policy 5.117, first and second reading, teacher tenure. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 5.117, teacher tenure.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Webb. Dr. Borchers.
Due to the cancellation of TN Ready tests during the pandemic, there are no teacher evaluation scores for the 1920 school year. Public Chapter 2 from the special legislative session clarifies that the two most recent evaluation scores can be used when determining tenure. Additionally, Public Chapter 378 changes the requirements for providing notice of non-renewal to teachers. This notice must now be sent to teachers by certified mail, overnight carrier, or email so that it will be received within 5 business days following the last instructional day. The policy has been updated to align with both of these legal changes.
Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to Board Policy 5.200, separation practices for tenured teachers. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 5.200, separation practices for tenured teachers.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Dr. Borchers.
Previously, state law gave the Commissioner of Education the authority to suspend a teacher's license if he or she broke a contract with the local Board of Education. Under this new change to state law, this authority now rests with the State Board of Education, and we've updated our policy to reflect that change.
Comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next on the agenda is Board Policy 5.201, separation practices for non-tenured teachers. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 5.201, separation practices for non-tenured teachers.
Per the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Webb. Dr. Borchers.
As you can see, we've also updated Model Policy 5.201 based on the previously mentioned changes. Number 1, to the way the notice of non-renewal was provided to teachers, and number 2, the fact that the authority for suspending the license now rests with the state school board.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, please cast your vote on Board Policy 5.201. Motion passes unanimously. Next is Board Policy 5.802, Qualifications and Duties of the Director of Schools. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 5.802, Qualifications and Duties of the Director of Schools.
For the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Dr. Borchers.
And this is the one that I referenced in 5.106. Again, the legal change asked the superintendent will be required to report potential misconduct by these individuals to the State Board of Education in the same manner that is done for licensed teachers.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next is Board Policy 6.200, Attendance. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 6.200, Attendance.
For the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion? Motion made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Ms. Webb. Dr. Borchers.
This is really no change in practice, but Public Chapter 223 changes the tiers of the Progressive Truancy Plan. Under this new law, Tier 1 applies to all students, so we've updated the policy to align to these changes.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next is item L, Board Policy 6.202, Homeschools. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 6.202, Homeschools.
For the recommendation, do I hear a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Agel. Dr. Borchers.
As the board knows, in order to conduct a homeschool, parents must meet certain criteria. Previously, this included having a high school diploma or a GED. Change to state law, however, now includes parents with a high school equivalency test, or HiSET, in this category, so we've made that change for that optional qualification option.
Comments or questions? Ms. Agel.
This is silly, but we have marked out director and put in superintendent, whereas in the past we've changed superintendent to director.
Typically, we're changing everything from director to superintendent.
We're going to try to change it all back. That may
We're going to change it all back to superintendent, okay.
Yeah. Hearing none, then, or please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item M, Board Policy 6.319, Alternative Education. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of Board Policy 6.319, Alternative Education.
You've heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Webb. Dr. Borchers.
Public Chapter 229 creates another exception regarding assignment to an alternative school or a program. Now a superintendent is not required to assign a student to the alternative school or program if, 1, the student committed an offense of violence or threatened violence, or an offense that threatened the safety of others in the school, or 2, the location of the alternative school or program is on the same grounds from which the student was disciplined. We've updated the policy to include that exception.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next is approval of a blanket purchase order in the amount of $50,000 for incidental purchases at Home Depot for FY22. I will have to admit, in my earlier years of non-knowledge of board operations, the first time I ever saw that, I said, why in the world are we having to buy blankets at Home Depot? I've learned a lot since that time. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of a blanket purchase order in the amount of $50,000 for incidental purchases at Home Depot for FY22.
For the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Ms. Agel. Dr. Borchers.
And as you shared, this is something we do every year for incidentals or things that Alan and his folks need to get to right away, and Home Depot can offer some of those things that others can't.
Got lots of blankets. Any other real comments or questions? If not, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. The next item is the Jefferson Middle School field trip to Williamsburg. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the JMS field trip to Williamsburg on March 11th through the 14th, 2022.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Motion made, made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Webb. Dr. Borchers.
Yes, I know Mr. Lynn is here. If there's any questions, I know the board knows what great benefit this trip is to our students and staff, really. But any questions, I think Mr. Lynn is ready and capable to answer any of those.
Ms. Agel.
If COVID gets worse, can this be canceled and the students get their money back?
Yes, Ms. Story and I sat down today and went through everywhere that we've made contact with hotels and buses. The final call was with Colonial Williamsburg today. We called them, and as long as we cancel, we can cancel within just outside of 7 days with Colonial Williamsburg. Everyone else, the hotel, been in a lengthy discussion with Mr. Lay about that, Mr. Cox as well. Obviously, it's on everyone's mind to be able to get students a 100% refund. So that will happen as long as we cancel. If we were to cancel, we'd have to do so with just outside of 7 days. So, yes.
How many years?
Well, we were on a good roll until last year, you know. It was 45 years straight, or 44. We lost out on 45, so we're starting over again, yes. And, of course, normally the trip goes in the fall, and we just felt like we couldn't obviously prepare for a fall trip, so the spring this year.
Ms. McLean.
And why did you move it? Okay, good.
Yes.
So y'all have probably all heard this, but I have to say it every year. My daughter went on this trip when she was in 8th grade, and she came home and said, I want to go to UVA, because at that time you all visited University of Virginia.
Yes.
And I was like, great, you work hard. And she did work hard, and she got in, and she graduated, and that's a really special place for her and for our whole family. So good job.
Love that story. Every year.
And again, doing what you do is because you want to do it and make this opportunity for our students to have this. Some who, that may be the only trip they ever get to go on. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Fellauer. I appreciate that. Thank you all.
Please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is approval of the audit firm of Brown, Jake, and McDaniel for the FY22 audit. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the audit firm of Brown, Jake, and McDaniel for the FY22 audit.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Ms. McLean. Dr. Borchers.
And as the board knows, this is just confirmation that we're securing the services of Brown, Jake, and McDaniel for the FY22 audits.
Comments or questions? Ms. Smith, any comments? If you're happy, we're happy. Please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next is the approval of the FY22 Governor's Civics Seal Grant in the amount of $32,000. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the FY22 Governor's Civic Seal Grant in the amount of $32,000.
Heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Second. Motion made by Ms. Webb, seconded by Mr. Stevens. Dr. Borchers.
Another great grant secured by our folks. The Governor's Civic Seal Grant recognizes school and districts that prioritize teaching our nation's history and civic values. This year, Oak Ridge Schools was awarded the Governor's Civic Seal Grant in the amount of $32,000 to support the implementation of high-quality civic education programs that result in readiness for college, career, and civic life. The district was awarded $20,000 for Robertsville Middle School and was awarded $7,000 at Willowbrook. So just very excited about this grant. Oh, no, I should say $5,000 then for Willowbrook, $7,000 for Robertsville, yes, and $20,000 for the district, sorry.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item R, addition of a temporary IT labor position. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of a temporary IT labor position.
Heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McLean, seconded by Ms. Agel. Dr. Borchers.
And as you can see from that memo from Mr. Kofer, this is temporary, and as you can probably expect, they're in the process of moving above average amounts of equipment through the department, salvage procedures, and all of those operations have to abide by both the state and Oak Ridge Schools protocols for salvage disposing of assets.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. We had suspicion that this next one might be coming. Approval of addition of a 1.0 teaching position at Linden Elementary. Dr. Borchers.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the addition of a 1.0 teaching position at Linden Elementary.
For the superintendent's recommendation, do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Motion made by Ms. Agel, seconded by Ms. McLean. Dr. Borchers.
Yeah, as we can understand, due to increased enrollment at Linden Elementary, we recommend a 1.0 teaching position to add an additional kindergarten teacher. We have 4 kindergarten teachers at Linden and 83 kindergarten students currently enrolled. Enrollment is equally high in grades 1 through 3, and the Tennessee Department of Education requires that we maintain a class average of 20 students per grades K-3. Our current average is above 20, which requires us to hire an additional 1.0 certified teacher.
Questions? Ms. McLean.
So do we have room for another class at Linden?
We have room. Yeah, you want to talk to that, Mr. Lay?
Yes, and I'll start by saying we're not out of the woods yet. Even with adding this additional 1.0 FTE, we're at 19.5 is the K3 average. So there is potentially the possibility we will need to add an additional teacher. But yes, I asked Mr. Ward today, this teacher, we were fortunate. We realized about a week and a half ago that this was going to need to happen. The EL teacher became the kindergarten teacher, was dual certified, so that class is in place, which keeps us from disrupting kindergarten students their first year. So we will be hiring an EL teacher. And then Mr. Ward said he had in another classroom that he could make a regular classroom if we would need to hire an additional teacher. If we did, that would be in 3rd grade. At this time, things have slowed down, so we may be fine, but we're very close. The other schools look good at this time.
Please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next is approval of the FY22 Family Resource Center grant budget. Is that grant budget or center, just grant?
Family Resource Center grant budget. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess on your attachments, you do have a budget there behind the scenes.
Yep.
And I recommend approval of the FY22 Family Resource Center grant budget.
Questions?
I think we all know what a great job Joe Bruce does and just a fantastic program for our community.
Without a doubt. Please cast your vote. Oh, I probably need a motion on that, don't I?
Move for approval.
Thank you. Motion made by Ms. Agle, seconded by Mr. Stevens. See, Superintendent, I have to blame him on that because he was going on and elaborating on that. I thought we'd already done that, so I can blame it on him this time. Any other comments or questions? Now, please cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we move to items for information. I would remind the board that there is a second meeting this month. That meeting is August the 23rd, and we have scheduled at this time a visit to the preschool on the 25th, beginning at 7:30 a.m. I would just take a moment and mention we had the official ribbon cutting this past week. A very nice turnout, a beautiful building, great teachers having the opportunity to become or to have the opportunities just to prepare those youngsters for their next levels. Those staff members, as all our schools do, a fantastic job, but now they've got the appropriate mechanism to work in. But it was a fun morning to do that. So that's all I have there. Items for discussion, old business, new business, any of those in any categories. Already heard a little bit about our attendance, and that's still a work in progress right now. Finding out, I would think so, right?
Yes, sir. If you compare numbers currently to last year at this time, it looks like our enrollment has not grown. But if you compare our current enrollment to where we were at the close of the 2020-21 school year, it looks like our year has grown. So, and of course, the information you were sent today, we have 281 new students to Oak Ridge. That's not counting kindergarten students. That would be actually new families, grades 1 through 12. So we look at that information, we feel like we've had growth, But if you compare it to this time last year, which is not necessarily unusual, because there's times we have students enrolled who will be withdrawing, but the other school systems have not done that yet. So we may be okay, but we'll have a better idea where we are the next board meeting.
Communications, I would mention, in talking with Dave, we will hopefully start back on our Focus on Education television show in October, and he will be sending me some dates that I'll share with the board, and can already be thinking about who your special guest might be for this upcoming season. We hope once we get underway, a little bit more time, even though I know our schools have volunteers working very hard right now, but probably I would think also in October we'd like to try to get back on our volunteer of the month and get that going again as well to recognize those people. Dr. Borchers, anything else?
No, I mean, other than just the environment we're in, we've had a good start and really looking forward to a great school year. So, but want to just thank all the people that are responsible for getting all these things put together to make sure that our students and families have a great school year.
Board members? Richard and Dave, thank you all back in the back. Appreciate your help. Lynn, thank you as always for all that you do. We stand adjourned.